Works of Sri Aurobindo from the book Letters on Yoga, Part 1, from the collective works of Sri Aurobindo, Volume 28, page 185, Chapter 7, Topic The Vital Being and the Vital Consciousness. Subtopic The Vital. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, mind and vital are two different processes of one consciousness. Vital means prana. It is the life force and desire force in a man and the part of the being that responds to desire and is the instrument of the life forces. Next subtopic, the true vital being and consciousness. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says there is behind all the vital nature in man his true vital being, concealed and immobile, which is quite different from the surface vital nature. The surface vital is narrow, ignorant, limited, full of obscure desires, passions, cravings, revolts, pleasures and pains, transient joys and griefs, exaltations and depressions. The true vital being, on the contrary, is wide, vast, calm, strong, without limitations, firm and immovable, capable of all power, all knowledge, all ananda. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, it is moreover without ego, for it knows itself to be a projection and instrument of the divine. It is the divine warrior, pure and perfect. In it is an instrumental force for all the divine realizations. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says it is the true vital being that has become awake and come in front within you. In the same way, there is too a true mental being, a true physical being. When these are manifest, then you are aware of a double existence in you, that behind is always calm and strong, that on the surface alone is troubled and obscure. But if the true being remains stable and you live in it, then the trouble and obscurity remain only on the surface. In this condition, the exterior parts can be dealt with more potentially, and they also made free and perfect. The true vital is in the inner consciousness. The external is that which is instrumental for the present play of Prakriti in the surface personality. When the change comes, the true vital rejects what is out of tune with its own truth from the external and makes it a true instrument for its expression, a means of expression of its inner will, not a thing of responses to the suggestions of the lower nature. The strong distinction between the two practically disappears. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, the higher and lower vital are divisions of the ordinary vital and equally ignorant. It is the true vital that is in contact with the divine. The true vital consciousness is one in which the vital makes full surrender, converts itself into an instrument of the divine, making no demand, insisting on no desire, answering to the mother's force and to no other, calm, unegoistic, giving an absolute loyalty and obedience with no personal vanity or ambition, only willing to be a pure and perfect instrument, desiring nothing for itself, but that the truth may prevail within itself and everywhere, and the divine victory takes place and the divine work be done. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says the true vital is capable of receiving the moments of the higher consciousness, and afterwards it can be capable of receiving the still greater supramental power and ananda. If it is not, then the descent of the higher consciousness would be impossible and supramentalization would be impossible. It is not meant that it possesses these things itself in its own right, and that as soon as one is aware of the true vital, one gets all these things as inherent in the true vital. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, it is as I told you, only by losing ego and having the sense of the infinite can one experience the true vital. So, you got the experience of the loss of the ego and the sense of a true vital existence. But there are all those parts of the human vital nature that are not the true vital, and these are the full impurities which have to be thrown in the fire of aspiration, burning in the true vital being. The illumined vital is in contact with the divine power or the higher truth and seeks to transform itself and become a true instrument. It rejects the ordinary vital movements. Next subtopic, parts of the vital being. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says there are 4 parts of the vital being. First, the mental, vital, which gives a mental expression by thought, speech or otherwise to the emotions, desires, passions, sensations, and other moments of the vital being. The emotional vital, which is the seat of various feelings such as love, joy, sorrow, hatred, and the rest. The central vital, which is the seat of the stronger vital longings and reactions. For example, ambition, pride, fear, love of fame, attractions and repulsions, desires and passions of various kinds, and the field of many vital energies. Last, the lower vital, which is occupied with small desires and feelings such as make the greater part of the daily life, for example, food desire, sexual desire, small likings, dislikings, vanity, quarrels, love of praise, anger at blame, little wishes of all kinds, and a numberless host of other things. Their respective seats are: first, the region from the throat to the heart. Second, the heart. It is a double center belonging in front to the emotional and vital and behind to the psychic. Third, from heart to the navel. Fourth, below the navel. Sri Aurobindo says the point about the emotion and the higher vital is a rather difficult one. If one classification in which mind is taken as something more than the thinking, perceiving, and willing intelligence, the emotional can be reckoned as a part of the mind, the vital in the mental. In another classification, it is rather the most mentalized part of the vital nature. Sri Aurobindo says in the first case, the term vital, higher vital, is confined to that larger moment of the conscious life force which is concerned with creation, with power and force and conquest, with giving and self-giving and gathering from the world for further action and expenditure of power, throwing itself out in the wider moments of life, responsive to the greater objects of nature. In the second arrangement, the emotional being stands at the top of the vital nature, and the two together make the higher vital. As against them stands the lower vital, which is concerned with the pettier moments of action and desire and stretches down into the vital physical, where it supports the life of the more external activities and all the physical sensations, hungers, cravings, satisfactions. The term lower must not be considered in a pejorative sense. It refers only to the position in the hierarchy of the planes. For although this part of the nature in earthly being tends to be very obscure and is full of perversions, lust, greed of all kinds, vanity, small ambitions, petty anger, envy, jealousy are its ordinary guests, still there is another side to it which makes it an indispensable mediator between the inner being and the outer life. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says it is not a fact that every psychic experience embodies itself in a purified and rightly directed vital current. It does that when it has to externalize itself in action. Psychic experience is in itself a quite independent thing and has its own characteristic forms. The psychic being stands behind all the others. Its force is the true soul force, but if it comes to the front, it can suffice all the rest. Mind, vital, the physical consciousness, can take its stamp and be transformed by its influence. When the nature is properly developed, there is a psychic in the mental, a psychic in the vital, a psychic in the physical. It is when that is there and strong that we can say of someone that he evidently has a soul. But there are some in whom this element is so lacking that we have to use faith in order to believe that they have a soul at all. The center of the psychic being is behind the center of the emotional being. It is the emotional that is nearest dynamically to the psychic, and in most men it is through the emotional center that the psychic can be most easily reached, and through the psychicized emotion that it can be most easily expressed. Many, therefore, mistake the one for the other, but there is a world of difference between the two. The emotions normally are vital in their character and not part of the psychic nature. Sri Aurobindo says, it must be remembered that while this classification is indispensable for the psychological self-knowledge and discipline and practice, it can be used best when it is not made too rigid and cutting a formula. For things run very much into each other, and a synthetical sense of these powers is as necessary as the analysis. Mind, for instance, is everywhere. The physical mind is technically placed below the vital, and yet it is a prolongation of the mind proper and can act in its own sphere by direct touch with the higher mental intelligence. And there is too an obscure mind of the body, of the very cells, molecules, corpuscles. Haeckel, the German materialist, spoke somewhere of the will in the atom, and recent science dealing with the incalculable individual variation in the activity of the electrons comes near to perceiving that this is not a figure but the shadow thrown by a secret reality. This body-mind is a very tangible truth, owing to its obscurity and mechanical clinging to past moments and facile oblivion and rejection of the new. We find in it one of the chief obstacles to permeation by the supermind force and the transformation of the functioning of the body. On the other hand, once effectively converted, it will be one of the most precious instruments for the stabilization of the supramental light and force in material nature. These are the words of our Lord Sri Aurobindo.